What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, you're watching TWA Motorsports, and welcome to how to spend money on an F-body, okay? All right, guys, in the last video, you saw me get the gas tank back in. You saw us get the fuel pump lined out. Still some stuff. I stopped the wiring just short, so I just put the tank in. I didn't run the wire to the front. We obviously got to put power up front on that wiring harness, the hot wire kit. And need to zip tie some lines up and whatnot. And I was hoping to have another piece of this puzzle before I made this video, but I don't. So here's what we're gonna be doing in this video. I wanna get the trim stuff back in the back, okay? So the little flap that folds down and the speaker covers and those rear panels. I wanna get all that back in the car, but I don't wanna do that before I put shocks in. So that is one of the things we've got here are new shocks from Viking. Now guys, a while back, I put Viking coilovers in the front of this thing, and I decided not to do a coilover in the back. This is just a double adjustable Viking shock. I'm gonna keep the stock cut springs. Had really good luck with those in the past, and I'm gonna keep them for now. Now down the road I may upgrade so I can kind of dial in the height that I want, but for now we're gonna be using those. And in order to get those in, I need all those panels out of the way so I can reach the top of the shock. So I wanted to do that before I started going back together. Now the rear end is still at my buddy's house getting the gear swapped out and rebuilt. But aside from that, you can also see we got some lower control arms, some adjustable lower control arms. Now, what that gives you the ability to do is it takes the place of those stamped ones that are weak. And I chose to get the ones that have a pivot point, right? So those joints, those roto joints, or I don't know what they call them. I can't think of it right now, but those joints will be on the rear end because they could get a little noisy. The urethane will be on the car, okay? So they're just a little less noisy. And these tend to not bind as much as the poly, okay? So you can get one of these that's a poly on both sides, and while they're pretty quiet, I've had pretty good luck with those no matter what manufacturer you go with, and I'll try to list all this stuff in the description down below. I've had pretty good luck with them not making noise, but these, kind of a similar situation. They may be a little noisier, but the noise is not going to be on the body mounted portion of it. So that's why I chose to go with those. And like I said, they bind less. Your factory ones will bend and flex, and they have rubber bushings. So they have a lot more movement. They're a lot quieter, but they're also really weak. The next thing that you see here is from UMI, and that is a Panhard rod relocation bracket. Now, what that does is it does away with the factory Panhard mounts. There's a bar that we took out to get the gas tank out of the way. This one kind of kicks up, as you can see, and what that allows is for more exhaust clearance. Now, I'm running single out exhaust, so it really doesn't matter as far as like, I don't need it for clearance on true duals. You're definitely gonna need that if you do the true dual setup. But I've generally when they're lowered, you just have less clearance. And so I wanted to clean up the look back there for one and give myself an additional bit of room for the exhaust. So that's why I got that. So today's video, we're gonna be installing all that stuff. And I think where we'll start is probably on the shocks. So let's get the hatch open, the carpet folded up. Let's see if we can get those old shocks out of place. Once you get the carpet folded up, like I've got it here, we'll just take this guy off, set it up here. That looks like a 15 millimeter. I believe so. Well, of course, like always, it is a 15, but it's spinning. So I'm gonna have to clamp the top of it here while I loosen it up by hand. That's the downside. Also wish that, I don't want to take those panels out. Life would be easier with the panels out though, believe me. Actually, I just turned it a couple times and that sucker fell right out, hitting it with the impact once I got it loose. So now let's open up our boxes and see what we've got. Now in the box, you got a couple things. First of all, this is just a standard shock that can be ran on other vehicles, so they don't include the stud to the bottom. Well, I mean, they include it, but it's not installed, so that's what this guy is. We'll worry about that later. But for now, we are gonna need this stuff. This will obviously go on the top side. We'll take this and the jam nut off and get it threaded into position with obviously one of these on the bottom with the rubber. I'll show you here in a sec. Now, depending on what type of opening you're going into is going to depend which way your rubber faces. Of course, that's not wanting to come off now with one hand. There we go. But what I mean by that is take a look at these. So you see there's a big rubber insert and a small one. We're going to want the small one facing the same way. And then you have, these should be the same, so you can't get those screwed up. We're gonna put one on here, and it's gonna run all the way down to that. And we're gonna have the small side facing open, or facing up. And then when we put the other one in the car, we'll have the small one facing down. I've already got it set in the car actually. And then we'll thread, hopefully I can keep this up into place while I thread one of these bolts on here. I had just enough reach to put that thing up in its opening and get this one started up top. So now I'm gonna go ahead and start to snug it down a little bit. Now the downside to this is I can't, look, I don't have the rear end here. So I can't necessarily torque that down. I mean, there's not a torque setting, but you're supposed to tighten that down until the outer, or that rubber washer, matches the outer diameter of the little brass, or the little silver washer on the top. And we're there now. The problem is once this has weight on it, we're probably not gonna be. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna use a jack. I'm just gonna put some pressure, some upward pressure on that thing. And then I'm gonna go ahead and snug it down, make sure everything's tight. That way we can button up this back here in the back. And then obviously I'll put my little piece back on, and I can get all this paneling back in, which has been making me crazy. I've been wanting to put it back in, as well as the latch mechanisms. So let me go ahead and knock that out. Like I said, I'm just gonna use a jack. Not probably the preferred method. Somebody will probably have a problem with that, but guys, look, I need that to press up to make sure I've got it locked in place. This is what I'm talking about. Just use the rubber pad to go against the bottom, jack that thing up, and now we'll go ahead. It actually didn't move much. I'm gonna give it 1 or 2 turns and then we should be good. Got both of them installed. Got the carpet laid back down. Got our, I think these were T40s, locked back into place. Both the shocks are facing in like they're supposed to, so we can make the adjustments we need as we need them. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock out putting the rest of the paneling back in here. Not really sure what I was thinking here. I gotta be back there to put the back bumper and the taillights back in. So disregard that. I didn't lock this side in yet. I did that one, which is just push tab. So for now, let's just move on. I'm still working on the back bumper. I'm not ready to put it on yet. So we'll continue. Well, this is not at all what I had planned as far as the next step in this video, but my GoPro decided to change to 120 frames per second. And what I use to edit my videos, which is Adobe Premiere, it wouldn't handle it, or my computer wouldn't handle it or whatnot. So here we are on the back end showing you guys this all finished up, all these parts installed. We're gonna roll into the car in a second, but I'm still working through some kinks with my GoPro. I know when I turn it away, the sound gets kind of muffled, and I didn't have that problem with the last one. I tried that same external mic on this one, and I still get that muffled. It's actually worse. So bear with me, and drop some info in the comments down below if you know of a good mic that works all the way around. I'm using a brand new, what is it, a Hero 12 is what I'm using as far as filming. And I'm in 4K now, which is good, but yeah, the audio kind of suffers. Anyway, let's show you what we got accomplished. And like I said, we'll roll under here and look up above here in a second. But I did go ahead, I don't know if you saw this, but I went ahead and put these in place. They just slide in. There's a washer here on either side, a small one and then a bigger one. And this will go into the rear end. But the other thing I didn't really talk about, I mentioned it, but you want to put your adjustment knobs on the inside. Otherwise, you're not going to have any adjustment on those down the road. So the shocks are in. Everything's good. They're all snug down. Obviously, we're waiting on the rear end. The next thing we moved to was the Panhard Relocation. Now, this is the bracketry all installed, and it's pretty simple. There's not much to it. It just comes with a bar, these 3 bolts, and these 2 pieces of metal. So these sandwich around the outside. We've got a sleeve in here for when it crushes down so it doesn't smash. But if you'll notice, look how much that's going to compress. I may end up putting a washer in there. It didn't come with anything, but man, that's going to smash a lot. And maybe that's how much that thing has moved, to be honest with you. But I don't want to put the Panhard in the bottom until we get the rear end in, because I'm afraid when we start to crunch this down and tighten this up, there is torque specs we'll go to when we put the rear end in. But if we tighten that up, I'm afraid we won't be able to get the Panhard right in. So I don't want to have that fight yet. But yeah, it's very simple. 2 smaller bolts up top with the sleeve up here, and then the bar bolts in the stock location, which we'll look at in a second. This one in the center where the old Panhard rod would go, and then our Panhard rod will be here, and it comes with a new bolt because it is a little wider. So while we're over here, before we get under the car, these are the lower control arms that I installed, and they're still loose. It's an 18 millimeter that unbolts those things, and use your stock bolt. But what I do to set these up is I put 2 bolts through the stock one on the ground, so we get the stock measurement, and that's how we start as far as for adjustments. And if we have to make adjustments down the road, which very rarely do you have to, that's a good starting point. So I did that, and then I put them into place, and these are somewhat locked down, but you still have some room to move. You can't really tighten those up until they're in the rear end and on the car, and you don't want to tighten that bushing up front until you have the suspension loaded. We want the weight on the suspension before we tighten those up front. Otherwise, it will absolutely wreck those bushings. But let's get underneath, and I'll show you guys what exactly we were messing with down here, because I didn't show you this. I do a lot of stuff off camera as far as painting bolts and whatnot. So I painted every single bolt that I took out for the most part. These 3 bolts that bolt, still got some plastic on there. These 3 bolts here that bolt the relocation bracket on, or relocation for the Panhard rod on, I painted all those, stripped them all down with my wire wheel over there and painted those. But you can see how much added clearance we have with this installed. So, I mean, think about this. The original one would have went straight here. So we gained this much room, and it's truly necessary if you do true duals on these cars. But it also, on a lowered car, gives you a lot more room to bring a 4-inch or a 3.5 inch or a 3-inch pipe through without it hitting either the car or the bar. Okay, so that's why I wanted to put this in, and it looks a lot nicer, to be honest with you. The other thing you'll notice while we're down here is I did polish these up a little bit. I didn't spend a ton of time on them, but I cleaned them with the Scotch-Brite, just went over them with some polish and one of my little buffer ball deals that go on my drill. And I did also paint these bolts that hold this in. So we've got 1, 2, 3 on this small piece, and then this piece sandwiches in, and we've got a couple there, but you'll notice we've got 2 that are missing because this used to bolt to the old bar that went in here. Well, obviously that's not a thing now, so I'm kind of in a transition. I don't know if I'm going to leave this. If it rattles, I may fold this up and rivet it to the other one. This one here, though, we can't do a whole lot with it. I could potentially zip tie him, I guess, to that, but guys, it's pretty sharp. I don't think the zip ties would last very long, but I wanted to show you guys kind of how I finished this up. Sorry about the camera malfunction. Hopefully we won't have that again. You know, when you're down here under a car and you're grabbing the camera and you're trying to film all this stuff, sometimes you accidentally flip the back of the camera and it hits something, and ultimately you change a setting. I've done that several times in the past on the old cameras, but it seemed like I haven't had that issue with this one yet, but obviously it's a thing. But if you guys did enjoy all this stuff, I will list all this stuff I use in the description down below. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this little update, because that's pretty much what it is at the back side of this video. But I think this stuff will be awesome once we get it installed. I'm hoping in the next video we have the rear end back. We can get possibly the back bumper finished up. I'm painting that lower piece again that goes around the exhaust. They call it the CETA mod. I'm having that resprayed, so that's why I couldn't put the bumper on in this video. But once we get the bumper on, then I think we can move our way back to the front. But we're getting very, very close on this thing. We're just missing a few little things to get it fired up for the first time, which is very, very exciting. But if you did enjoy this video, please, like always, smash that thumbs up button. Guys, if you are not subscribed, go down, hit that subscribe button. Of course, ring that bell notification. That will notify you every single time we drop a new video. And stay tuned to see what we work on next.